360. Комната 360.
Room 360, another podcast with a career diplomat. Today we have a very far away guest. Actually, we're just in the heartland of Urals, and we have a Australian guest here, Damien Bruckard, who's second secretary of the Australian Embassy in Moscow, right?
That's right.
And you're touring around the country right now, right?
That's right. So it's wonderful to be here with you today in Yekaterinburg. I've been on the road for about a week now with taking an Australian short film festival on tour. I was in Cheboksary, then Kazan, now here, moving to Novosibirsk and then Vladivostok before taking a 9-hour domestic flight back to Moscow. So getting a good sense of the breadth and diversity of your great country.
Broad perspective. Okay. So it's very interesting how they point out and emphasize on the cities that are of points of major interest. When they have Novosibirsk, like Kazan and Cheboksary. Cheboksary is a very interesting, option. And the first thing, tell us please a bit more about this Film Fest week.
Sure.
Which is the point of visit everywhere.
Sure. So this is an Australian short film festival. So we are showing 9 short films, which have been selected by an Australian-Russian curator called Greg Dolgopolov. He was born in St. Petersburg, migrated to Australia when he was quite young, and is a professor of sort of cinema studies at the University of New South Wales in Australia. So we've been working with him to select a program to show the diversity of Australian cinema. So it will be showing in all of the cities that I mentioned before. And our aim is really to bust some stereotypes about Australia. So there are no kangaroos, there are no beaches. It shows a much more sophisticated picture of the country.
Aesthetic, like upside down stereotypes, yeah.
Exactly. So we try to move beyond those stereotypes, and we found that we did this last year as well. So this is the second time that we did this. Last year we did it in the sidelines of the World Cup when the Australian soccer team was playing in Kazan, Sochi, Moscow and St. Petersburg. We held a film festival there to prove to the people of those great cities that in addition to being a good sporting nation, we also have some more things going for us as well.
Culturally deep as well. This guy, Greg Dolgopolov, he even made a film about himself. The title of the film is Greg Dolgopolov. Yeah, I've seen. I'll probably be a participant of this really cool event. 9 films is a lot. Has everything gone well yet?
Fantastically well.
Right?
In Moscow, for instance, on the first night at the opening, we had a packed theatre of 300 people. So many people came that we had to open 2 more nights.
Wow.
We've had Q&A sessions after each screening with Greg and sometimes myself. And we've had great comments, really engaged audiences. So we're super happy with how it's going.
Is Mr. Dolgopolov traveling around the country with you?
He is.
Oh my God.
He is.
Oh my God. He's a committed artist, actually. If there's anything you would like to tell us about the Film Fest week, what was maybe the most interesting reaction to some of the movies? Do the people have the top one that they like?
It's interesting because the films are all so very different. There are horror films, there are comedies, there are dramas, there are films that are shot in the outback, in the desert, there are films in cities, there are they're all completely different. There are historical pieces, there are futuristic pieces, and so everyone has their own favorite films. For me, the most interesting was probably in Moscow on the opening night. One of the comedies was so popular that after every joke, the crowd was bursting into applause. And that was a very, very funny film about calling up your bank and being put on hold. And so, when you hear these robotic voices on the other end of the line, this film posits that it's not actually a robot speaking, but there are real humans pretending to to be as annoying as possible, frustrating you. And so watching that dynamic play out is a very funny and universal experience.
Oh, that's a cool idea, actually. Yeah, I also get a lot of calls like that, probably from real people who are emulating the robot voice. Okay, for now I would like to get down to a more serious question, as we will be approaching the last one, which will be so serious. It's just where I'm unable to underestimate its seriousness. The question is about the UN program, the year of Indigenous peoples' languages. How does Australia point in an example to the world society in terms of working with the Indigenous peoples and kind of embracing their languages and embracing their culture?
Yeah, that's a really, really important issue in Australia. It's a vexed issue as well, because immediately prior to European settlement of Australia, there were thousands and thousands of native languages that were spoken in Australia by the First Peoples. Subsequently, many of those have died out. They've become extinct, and it has become a major priority for the Australian government over the last probably 40 years, I would say, to do as much as possible to preserve those languages. And so there are big sort of funding programs for universities to document languages that are under threat. There are many sort of professorial positions available at universities. And, the Australian government directly and also sort of through experts engages internationally in conversations on these issues.
So every linguist listening right now, you can get a job at any university you would like to get a job. Anywhere, in the Outback, in the Melbourne, in Canberra, just go down there to the Australians, to the Australian continent.
Not just linguists.
All right.
Everyone come.
Yeah. And you've mentioned before the podcast this rapper, this young hip-hop artist. I couldn't actually catch up his name from what you were saying. Yeah, but you like him obviously, right?
Yeah, that's right. I was just listening to him the other day. On the topic of Indigenous languages, we've actually seen a little bit of a turn in mainstream popular culture in Australia towards embracing Indigenous languages in music. So the Young Australian of the Year last year, so this is an award that's given to one person under the age of 25 to contributions to society and culture, was the Australian rapper, dancer and actor called Baker Boy. He's had several huge hits in Australia in the last 2 years. He's been touring overseas in Europe, sort of known locally in the Arnhem Land, which is in Northern Territory, as the Fresh New Prince, and he raps in his own Yolngu Mata language, which is from the Arnhem Land. He also raps in English as well, and I would love to get him out to Russia at some point, but we'll see how we go.
Does he rap both in English and in his language quite well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Equally, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We have this competition in Australia every year, which is a huge voting competition for the best song, and he's done incredibly well. I think he got 2 songs in the top 100 last year, which is big because it's huge competition.
I'll check on him in my Apple Music. All right, and as we're approaching the most serious question, I would like to prepare the audience actually, because it's been one of the most viral events in the media, and it's been one of the most tragic events for like maybe years and years in Australia and New Zealand, right? Is of course the Christchurch attack, right? When you've had an Australian citizen shooting people in Muslim mosques live, filming it, everything. And to be honest with you, I've seen some. I've almost got into the moment when it was live even. And it struck me every fiber of my soul. I was really like, oh my God, it's really happening. It's like 9/11 stuff. Really, you can compare it without any drawbacks. Without any thinking, like second thoughts, right? And what's now Australia is doing to prevent those kind of attacks? Because recently, this Consul General of France, he told me that on the podcast, he told us that he had the Macron and Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, had a appeal, the Christchurch appeal signed. That's a document that wants the corporations tackle those kind of events. How the Australia is going to be doing about it? And further, yeah.
And especially in cybersphere, because we know that through 30 minutes, all people in the whole world can, through the broadcast channel, that person looking for these disgusting events that happened in Australia, actually, in this sphere.
Yeah, well, first of all, what happened in Christchurch was obviously an absolute tragedy, and the Australian Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, immediately came out and condemned the attack and expressed, deepest sympathies for the people of New Zealand who were affected, were killed, their families, their friends. It's an absolutely horrible event. That's important as well for politicians to come out and publicly condemn those events, to say that it is completely unacceptable. Leadership matters, but so too do practical steps. So there are 2 things that I would highlight the Australian government has been doing to respond to the Christchurch attack. One is that we are creating new criminal laws to prevent the weaponising of social media platforms and to protect people from the live streaming of violent crimes. So there'll be sort of new criminal offences created to make it a crime what exactly happened in Christchurch. So more specifically, it'll be a criminal offence for social media platforms themselves not to remove abhorrent violent material expeditiously. That has a serious punishment, up to 3 years imprisonment, and fines that can reach up to 10% of the platform's annual turnover. So when you're talking about a company like Facebook live streaming, that's an extraordinarily high potential fine. And there's also a requirement that platforms anywhere in the world must notify the Australian Federal Police if they become aware that their service is streaming abhorrent violent conduct that is happening in Australia, and that also has fines attached to it. In addition, we have an e-safety commissioner, and they have certain powers to in relation to these issues.
Could you please explain the e-safety? What's the e-safety for Russians? It's just maybe unheard.
Yeah, so e-safety is basically about safety online. I mean, we just use E as a sort of prefix for anything to do with
electronic. Right.
Yeah. So email is electronic mail. I guess it's an English E and not a Russian E.
Of course, yes.
Right. Although that would work for internet. And And the second thing I wanted to refer to as well was some action that we're taking at the G20. So we're leading a
international
diplomatic
level.
Yeah, exactly. A diplomatic effort to try and ensure that there are some sort of action taken by governments to do similar things to what we have proposed domestically as part of our criminal legislation. I think there is universal condemnation of what happened in Christchurch, and we'll see how that goes at the diplomatic level.
Yeah, that's surely, most definitely right. And well, for the reason of the international reaction to those events of the Christchurch, I think it's. It just tells about the fact that our society is never kind of prepared to whatever may happen, and it's good to know that in Australia the system could react, could become flexible.
Well,
in
Australia's
a way.
actually got a pretty good record of reacting very quickly and strongly to such terrible events. So, for instance, after the last major massacre in Australia, which was in 1996, I believe, at Port Arthur in Hobart.
23 years ago.
A long time ago. And the reason there hasn't been any such massacres since has been because we banned semi-automatic weapons immediately afterwards. There was...
And I'm sorry, that's the same thing that the New Zealand has done.
Right,
recently.
Exactly. And, it makes perfect sense. Each country has their own gun culture. Australia before then had some attachment to weapons as well, especially farmers, but there was leadership shown by the then Prime Minister John Howard, who just said this is unacceptable. We can't have these devices around which are designed specifically to kill human beings in our society. And we banned them, and there hasn't been anything remotely like that since.
We'll be concluding our podcast because we don't have a lot of time, obviously, with your protocol. According to everything right now also happening around in university. Thank you very much for visiting us, for actually accepting our offer to record everything. I hope we will send you the recording, the mastered one, and you will enjoy a little bit like this little podcast. And we wish you professional luck, professional approach every time, and as you've shown today, thank you.
Yeah, and actually subscribe around 360 on SoundCloud. Actually we have the podcast not only on SoundCloud, actually in YouTube. You can search us there.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and I guarantee I'll be subscribing on both of those channels. Congratulations, it's a great program.
Thank you, Damien. Thank you. Much appreciated. Okay, we're off the live.